All right, man. What's up, everybody? Let's get into it. 49ers lose to the Detroit Lions 40-34 in Week 17. Tons to get to from a meaningless game, really, for both teams. Not totally meaningless. We'll get to why the loss mattered for the 49ers here in a little bit. But off the rip, let me just get this out of the way. First of all, Chris Biederman not here tonight. Because the Sacramento Kings are some assholes who had to fire their head coach. So Chris is on assignment with the Sacramento Kings right now. The second thing I want to get out of the way just up top. Jake Moody, man. This is who he is. Getting on here and ripping the 49ers again for taking a kicker 99th overall is pointless. Lambasting a guy because he missed a 58-yarder is whatever, but missing a kick before that from 51, you can't do that. If you're going to be the 99th overall pick, you have to hit those, especially in a game where your defense probably isn't going to get a stop. And then you miss an extra point. And then you miss but you drill an onside kick just directly out of bounds, like not even a good effort. But again, this is just who Jake Moody is. And if the 49ers want to continue moving forward with him as their kicker, then I think they're going to continue to leave points on the field because I don't think he's that good of a player. And that's just kind of what it is. So, not going to angrily drag Jake Moody. You don't drag a bad player when they have a bad game. It's just kind of who he is. So, 49ers made a mistake with that draft pick, but we knew that the night of the draft. All right. More important things. So, underlying this entire loss is Brock Purdy's elbow injury. He took if you missed it, which if you're watching a 49ers live stream at 9:11 p.m. on a Monday, I don't think you've missed it. But Purdy took a hit from Lion safety Brian Branch, and apparently just got hit in the right spot on the elbow. And Kyle Shanahan, after the game, said there was like tingling and numbness in his arm. And you saw Purdy on the sideline. Like again, we don't know the extent of the injury. His status for next week is up in the air. But it looked like on the sideline, again, not the injury itself, but on the sideline, it was reminiscent of the 2022 NFC title game when Brock Purdy left the game with what turned out to be a torn UCL. He tried to make some real throws on the sideline and couldn't. And, he eventually had to come back into the game because of the injury to Josh Johnson. But I couldn't help but envision that watching him on the sideline. I don't think the injury is that serious, but we don't know yet. The ramifications here obviously have nothing to do with the 2024 season because the season's over for the 49ers. They're 6-10. They got to wrap it up next week in Arizona. The schedule doesn't even, or their game against Arizona doesn't even matter for the division. They're going to finish last no matter what. There will be some draft stuff on the line, but we can cross that bridge when we get to it. The thing for Purdy is if this injury is anything significant, it dramatically alters what his contract looks like in the offseason if he even does an extension at all. I'm not going to get super deep into the weeds yet because he might play next week. And he might be fine, and all of this is moot. But the reason it matters is that if this is a major injury of some sort, I can't imagine the 49ers are paying him big money this offseason if he has two major elbow injuries in 3 years as a starter. 2+ years as a starter, I should say. Especially if they think that it's going to cost him, training camp or something like that. This may push their timeline back a little bit. It may push his timeline back a little bit. It may push him, and again, we don't know the extent of the injury. He could play next week. But it may, if it's major, it might push Purdy to just take security and take way less. And now you have a situation where you have a really good quarterback making probably less than he should make. Well, we have a conversation about whether he's a $60+ million quarterback or not. Maybe he winds up taking a significantly discounted rate because he wants some long-term security after suffering another injury to his throwing arm. But we will cover all that once we determine the extent of Purdy's injury. Shanahan was pretty not very forthcoming immediately after the game, just because I don't think they totally know yet. I'm sure he'll get imaging done and testing done, and when Shanahan talks to reporters on Tuesday in his conference call, we'll probably get some more info on what's going on exactly with Brock Purdy's elbow injury. But man, it is worth keeping a very close eye on. Again, having nothing to do with Week 18 and having everything to do with the fact that it could dramatically alter the course of the 49ers franchise if Brock Purdy has a major injury that affects his contract extension in any way in the offseason. So that's why that's important. That's why I saw our buddy Damon Bruce arguing that the 49ers should sit Brock Purdy the last 2 games, and it's like, man, this is kind of why. You got so they were down to their 4th string left tackle to start the game with Charlie Heck because Trent Williams, Jalen Moore, and Spencer Burford were all out. So they were down to Charlie Heck to start the game, and then after, I think, a drive or 2 drives, he left the game, and Austin Pleasance came in. So now you're down to your 5th string left tackle. You're on your, what did we decide at left guard, 4th string left guard? Because Aaron Banks was 1, Ben Barch was 2, Spencer Burford was 3. Yeah, and so it was Nick Zakel, your 4th string starting left guard. Shout out to Colton McKivitz for gutting it out and playing tonight through an injury that cropped up during practice. I actually thought the 49ers offensive line did a pretty good job tonight for the most part. But that's what you worry about is safety getting a free shot at your quarterback's blind side. And when that happens, like, bad things happen. And so that's where things sit with Purdy's elbow. We'll be all over that when Shanahan speaks on Tuesday. Hopefully with some more information and hopefully with some good news about Purdy and his throwing elbow. That's honestly, like, that's all that matters from tonight from a long-term perspective. On the other hand, a couple of smaller things that jumped out to me from tonight, because again, losing to the Lions really desperately wanted to win that game. And honestly, the 49ers did too. And this is why I want to talk about Kyle Shanahan and Nick Sorensen here. This game on Monday night is why I don't buy the common refrain that Kyle Shanahan has lost the locker room, or the 49ers culture is somehow worse than it was and they've lost their culture, or whatever it is that we see written about the 49ers. The fact that they came out and played their asses off, specifically on offense in this game, was pretty telling to me. And that's a common theme when you start going through Kyle Shanahan's seasons as a head coach. 2017 was a mess, but man, they played really hard late into the year in a season where a lot of dudes could have just laid down. They played really hard late into that season. Same thing in 2018. Same thing in 2020. And then this year, they're not winning a lot of games down the stretch here, but I thought tonight was as much evidence as you need to know that the 49ers aren't quitting on Kyle Shanahan, or Kyle Shanahan's message is falling on deaf ears, or their culture is gone, or whatever dramatics we've heard from a really rough season. It's been a bad year, to be sure. There's no sugarcoating that this season's been anything more than dog shit for the 49ers. But when you start talking firing a coach, and you start talking about making dramatic sweeping changes like that, you have to first look and make sure that those dramatic sweeping changes are going to be something that, A, benefit your program, and B, if you're going to say things like, or make assertions that Kyle Shanahan lost the locker room, or the 49ers no longer have this culture, or whatever it is, I think games like tonight or games on Monday night refute it, frankly. I thought the 49ers were good tonight offensively. I thought Kyle Shanahan was really good tonight offensively. Again, we'll save the Brock Purdy conversation for when Chris is here, so we can have a more kind of wide-ranging discussion on it. But I thought he was outstanding for I don't know how many offensive plays they had. Give me 1 second here. They ran 70. No, that's not right. That would be a lot. They ran 60 plays, and Brock Purdy threw on 40 of them. And of those 40 plays that he threw on, I thought he was really good for like 35 of them. And he had the couple of bad interceptions. The first one that he overthrew Pearsall was just terrible. The second one was kind of one of the pitfalls of the 49ers offense, is they live on those in-breaking routes, and if you get it against the right coverage and you get a ball-hawking safety like Kirby Joseph, who leads the league in interceptions, he's going to get one. And that's what happened. So no, I thought Purdy was for the most part good tonight. I thought Kyle Shanahan had a good night. And if you take away those interceptions, I think there's a very easy chance the 49ers win this game, because it was just, they were trading scores. And the 49ers had held the Lions to a field goal, and they couldn't capitalize on that because Purdy threw the pick. But that's why Kyle Shanahan doesn't go anywhere. Because in his week 17 of a lost year, he's getting the most out of a 49ers offense that's starting 2 offensive linemen, maybe 3 offensive linemen who won't be in the league next year. That's at least won't be starting in the league next year. So I thought it was a really impressive night from the 49ers head coach. Defensively, let's talk about Nick Sorensen. It hasn't been the best year for the 49ers rookie DC. But I also don't think we're going to see the 49ers fire Nick Sorensen after 1 year. I do think there's some things schematically that need to change. There were just too many plays tonight where the Lions had guys open in the flat, or had guys being covered in the flat by defensive ends. And that's a scheme thing that I think the 49ers need to adjust to. But let's assume for a moment that Nick Sorensen is going to be the DC next year, because I think he is. He's gotten a vote of confidence from Kyle Shanahan, a strong vote of confidence from Kyle Shanahan every time he's been asked. That's what it is. Don't shoot the messenger. So I think it's important to note that Robert Saleh got lambasted his first 2 years as a DC. And lo and behold, you get some dudes on defense, and all of a sudden Robert Saleh becomes such a good defensive coordinator that he is hired as a head coach. And he's probably going to get another DC job next year. He's doing consulting for the Packers. Wouldn't surprise me if he's the Packers DC next year, or the defensive coordinator on some very good team. So I'm interested to see what Nick Sorensen looks like with a full year under his belt as a defensive play caller, and what he looks like with a revamped version of the 49ers defense, which I think is what we're going to get next year. Like you just saw it tonight. They're not good enough in the second level. D. Winters, for athletic as he is and for as hard as he hits, isn't there in coverage yet. They had too many coverage busts in the secondary, and that's kind of what happens when you have D. Winters starting at will linebacker. Not a ton of experience. You have Isaac Yiadom starting at corner. Not a bad player, but again, not an awesome player. Renardo Green, a rookie, starting in the secondary. Malik Mustafa, a rookie, starting in the secondary. Like they have issues all along the defensive line. Nick Bosa is the only player who can rush the passer with any consistency. I thought Bosa was outstanding against Penei Sewell. He had a really, really good night, but they just need to overhaul their defense. They need more dudes. Like that's going to hit. So I'm interested to see what Nick Sorensen looks like next year. And I think a game like tonight, where he just got his lunch money taken, is a good opportunity to learn. Ben Johnson just kicked his teeth in. Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, kicked his teeth in. Like that's just kind of what happened. Those coverage busts, those players running wide open, that's a product of an offensive coordinator just kind of having a defensive coordinator's number. And some of the communication and execution stuff with the players too, but fascinated to see what the Niners defense looks like next year. Because while Nick Sorensen may be a little bit of the problem this year, I'm not totally sold that he sucks as a defensive coordinator all the way. So we'll kind of see. I will say though, he got smoked tonight. That was bad. That was about as bad as it gets. A couple other things that stood out to me as we spin these games forward and kind of look ahead to 2025. Ricky Pearsall, man, what a freaking game from the first round pick. He ended the game with 17 catches, 190 yards, and a touchdown for the season. he finished Monday night with 8 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. And did it in a bunch of different ways. He was a deep threat, shallow crossers, the deep in cutting routes. He did it all. And was really good at creating separation against man. He was just, I think, kind of the what the 49ers were hoping they were going to get when they selected him in the first round. This is by no means kind of the ceiling, or can it be the ceiling? But when you look at what Ricky Pearsall was doing 2 weeks ago, where he's basically a non-factor in the offense, and you're going, hey, they kind of need him. They need this guy to be at least like a wide receiver 2, and he's not involved at all. And then you go to last week where he has 4 catches on 4 targets, and then come back to this week where he has 10 targets, tied for the second most on the team. His 8 catches were tied for the most on the team. 10 targets were tied for the most on the team. So were his 8 catches. 141 yards, led the team, and they were the most receiving yards by a 49ers rookie since Jerry Rice at 241 back in 1985. Third most receiving yards ever for a 49ers rookie in a game. Jerry Rice in 85 and Dave Parks in 64. He had 146, I think, was Parks. And then there's Pearsall at 141. That's a really, really impressive performance for the rookie. Now, Detroit's secondary isn't good. To be very, very clear, they're super beat up, and their defensive line isn't great. Like, I expected the 49ers to put up some points. But for Ricky Pearsall to do that against any defense, that's important. That's a pretty big deal. So I'm optimistic about him moving forward. And again, another player I'm excited to see with a full NFL offseason. And then B, just if he can stay healthy through the offseason program and through training camp where he can really kind of get into the offense, I could look at a pretty good player. And if he's wide receiver 2, again, we don't know about Brandon Ayuk. Kyle Shanahan did tell reporters on the week it's all messed up because Saturday, he told reporters on Saturday that Brandon Ayuk is at the team facility going through rehab. He had his surgery in LA. He's just kind of going through the rehab process, and he's kind of on track. So that's good news. No setback so far. But let's assume a year or 2 years into the future, your receiving core is Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 1, and Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver 2. Like, ideally. And I think Pearsall showed tonight that he can absolutely be that for the 49ers. And that's a big deal. The other thing that jumped out to me tonight, Isaac Guerendo can play, dude. Like, I know we've kind of said that for a while. It's not like he's been good. But I thought he was a little bit underutilized in the second half. He finished the game with 9 carries, 34 yards. But his ability to catch the football and to be an effective receiver is huge. When you look at Kyle Shanahan's just kind of ethos, his philosophy, it's you don't want to have to change your offense when certain players are in the game. And frankly, I think that's kind of why their offense sputtered a little bit this year with Jordan Mason in instead of Christian McCaffrey. Because, hey, they don't, like, it's just a little bit different offense with Jordan Mason in the game than McCaffrey. But if all of a sudden Isaac Guerendo is going to be a threat as a receiver, whether we've seen him take deep shots back against the Bears, and was that week 14, and we saw him do it again tonight. That throw from Purdy was sick, by the way. Down the left sideline, dropped in a bucket to Guerendo in kind of a muddy pocket as he was getting hit. That was a nice throw. But if he's going to be an effective receiver, 4 catches on 4 targets for 65 yards tonight, that's significant. That might be like he is your number 2 running back next year behind Christian McCaffrey, in a spot where they have to figure out ways to get Christian McCaffrey off the field a little. And assuming McCaffrey's healthy next year, having a player like Guerendo that they can put in, and man, you know what? They feel pretty good about running a lot of the same stuff they do with McCaffrey. All right. Now maybe you're able to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy. Maybe you're able to keep him to limit his workload a little bit. Not limit, that's a crazy word. To lighten his workload a little bit with a player like Isaac Guerendo. So super impressive rookie year from Guerendo, especially. He's another one like Pearsall. Don't forget, like, yes, Pearsall got shot. We all know that, which is just an insane thing. Every time I say it, it has been how many months has it been? It's been 3 months, 4 months, whatever. It's still insane. But remember before that, like putting aside that he got shot in the chest and then missed the first 6 weeks of the regular season, don't forget that he hurt his hamstring in training camp. And then when he came back, he like immediately hurt his shoulder and missed a bunch of times. So Ricky Pearsall had that issue, and then Garendo as well missed a bunch of time with the hamstring injury. So both of those guys who were I thought good tonight are both really, really intriguing players for me going into next season. Assuming they're healthy, get the full offseason program, get a full training camp. I think they could both contribute in a big way for the 49ers offense next season. Last thing here, and sorry, we're live on YouTube right now. If you are tapped in on YouTube, A, appreciate you, salute. B, if you could hit the thumbs up, that would be great. And if you are watching the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little notification bell, and we would appreciate the heck out of that. Last thing, the 49ers 2025 opponents are now set because no matter what happens, they lose. I say lose the tiebreaker to the Cardinals. The Cardinals are 7-9. The 49ers are 6-10. So even if the 49ers win on Sunday in Arizona, they're still finishing in last place. And the other 3 last place teams that they'll play are also set. They are so far behind the rest of their divisions that they are not going to make that up in a week. So check this schedule out. If you're hoping for a 49ers bounce back next year, check this out. They have their 3 division games at home. We'll start at home. They have their 3 division games. Then they have Atlanta and Carolina, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and then Chicago, because they play the NFC North last place team at home. So they get Chicago again next year. Then on the road, they have their 3 NFC West games. They get the Saints, the Buccaneers, the Texans, the Colts, and then the Giants, the last place team in the NFC East, and the Browns, the last place team in the AFC North. After having what I think is going to land as the hardest schedule or second hardest schedule in the league this year, playing their first place schedule, the 49ers are going to get the last place teams from the NFC North, the NFC East, NFC East and AFC South. NFC North, NFC East, AFC North. There we go. We're back on track. But then they also get the AFC South and the NFC South. 2 not awesome divisions. And you look at a team like Atlanta. Is Atlanta going to be great next year? I mean, maybe if Michael Penix makes a leap. I like Michael Penix a lot, by the way. But if he makes a leap, then maybe Atlanta's super dangerous. Maybe Bryce Young and the Panthers have really got something there, which, by the way, Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, should get some Coach of the Year votes. The fact that they're still competitive is incredible. And the fact that Bryce Young is playing as well as he is also incredible. So shout out to the Panthers. But again, probably not going to be great. The Jags, I'm not buying it. The Titans, no. The Bears, we'll see. I'm not super sold on whatever it is that organization is doing at any time. The Saints got a long way to go to rebuild and an even bigger salary cap issue than the 49ers look like they might have over the next couple of years. The Bucs are good. I think Tampa Bay is a good team. But then Houston is a major TBD. They regressed big time this year. The Colts, I don't think are very good. The Giants, I don't think are going to be very good again. And the Browns, I don't think are going to be very good again. So you get healthy, you revamp the defensive line at least, but you revamp your defense, and I think they're in a pretty good spot. In the secondary, you got to figure out what you're doing in the second level, whether it's going to be D. Winters, whether you're re-signing Dre Greenlaw, that's all TBD. But you revamp your defensive line. I think you got to overhaul your offensive line pretty significantly. Banks at left guard is a free agent. You got to figure that out. I think they got to move on from Jake Brendel. He's just not good enough at that center position. Dominic Pooney can play. If he can find an upgrade at right tackle, great. I think you got to do that. But the defensive line is the big one for me. They need pass rush help. They need at least rotational defensive tackles, if not another starter there. They have a lot of work to do, but assuming they do that work when you look at their schedule, they're in a really, really good spot to bounce back and be pretty good again next year. Barring Brock Purdy having suffered a major injury tonight and it affects him going into next year, which, again, Kyle Shanahan will speak on Tuesday with reporters, and hopefully we'll get a better idea of what Brock Purdy is dealing with after injuring his right elbow in tonight's loss. I think that's all I got for this game. The Lions are freaking good, dude. Like, I want to hate them really bad. Like, there's part of me that really wants to just despise them. But, man, 4th and 3 is just automatic. Unless Renardo Green is covering Sam Laporta. That was a great pass breakup by Renardo Green. Another rookie who I think can play. But no, that lateral, the touchdown they get into a 2nd and 24, they get it to a 3rd and 12, and then they run that slant and lateral play. And the execution is just so high level. Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome. Their offensive line's really good. That's just an awesome team. That said, I don't know how far they're going in the postseason, man. Those 4th and 3s get a little tougher when it's the postseason. And their defense, man, if Brock Purdy is cooking you with Ricky Pearsall and Isaac Guerrero and a patchwork offensive line, the Vikings might score 50 next week, man. Like that's the thing that jumps out to me is that Lions defense tonight. As good as the Niners offense was, the Lions were just missing tackles. They had guys out of place. They were getting cooked in coverage. Like the Vikings could get them. The Vikings. The Commanders could rack up a bunch of points on them. The Eagles certainly. At some point about midway through the season was like, I think the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl, and I think they're going to win it by a lot of points. And when they win it by a lot of points, they're going to be like, yeah, of course they did. They were the best team all year. But their injury situation is so fucked that I don't think that their defense is going to be good enough to get stops in a game where their offense only scores like 20, which I think is going to happen at some point in the postseason. Shoot, it might have it like here's where this is wild. If you haven't followed it, this is nuts. In the NFC North right now, if the Lions, so the Lions won, they go to 14-2. They're tied with Minnesota, but they hold the tiebreaker currently. So they're the number 1 seed in the NFC North, leader currently. They currently have the number 1 seed and a first round bye. If they lose to Minnesota next week, they have to go to Tampa Bay in wildcard round instead of getting a bye week. And man, if Detroit loses that game to Minnesota, and then you tell me they got to go on the road to Tampa Bay, that's tough. I like Tampa a lot, man. They've been there before. You had a Lions team that was riding high thinking it was going to be the number 1 seed, and then they lose, and all of a sudden they gotta not get a bye week, and they gotta travel to Florida to go play. That's a bad spot. That's a bad spot, man. Alas, we'll have to talk about the playoffs without the 49ers because, of course, they were eliminated last week, and I think they're in a good spot to bounce back next year, particularly because I think Kyle Shanahan's a good coach. I think Brock Purdy, for some of his faults, let me say this about Brock before I get out of here. Purdy tonight, and again, before he got hurt, and let's put his elbow injury aside here for a moment. Purdy tonight, before getting hurt, was 27 of 35 for 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And I think the 2 interceptions, or at least certainly the first one, I think the reason assessing Brock Purdy is so hard is because the highs are so high and the lows are so low. And we've seen full games of the low lows where he looks just abominable. But we've seen also a bunch more games of the high highs. And that's why he's going to get paid. That's why he's going to be the Niners franchise quarterback. But I think I think Monday night was a perfect encapsulation of Brock Purdy, the player, and why it's so difficult to pin down exactly what to do with him as a franchise player. Because he, against, again, a not very good Lions defense, but still a 13-2 team coming in, now 14-2. Behind a patchwork offensive line in the most extreme sense of the word, with Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle and Jawan Jennings as his top three receivers, and Isaac Orendo as his top running back. Goes out there and has a game where he goes 27 of 35 for 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. That's not bad, man. And if you take away the airmailed throw right to Kirby Joseph where he just overthrew the open receiver in Pearsall, then you're looking at a lot better stat line, and B, you might be looking at a Niners win. And man, if Brock Purdy had gone in against the Detroit Lions after the Detroit Lions had said, we're going to try and kick somebody's ass, we're bringing everything we got, blah, 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 blah. And they did. Salute to the Lions. They took care of business. But if Purdy had gone in and thrown for 4 touchdowns and 400 plus yards and the Niners win that game, the conversation is very different, right? So that's why I don't want to harp too hard on the 2 picks. I do think there's something to in big spots in close games, him seeming to airmail throws and throw bad interceptions. But again, it's easy to forget that this is his second full season as a starter. There's going to be some growing pains. There was enough good tonight in a scenario where you look and you go, man, that wasn't the best version of the 49ers. That wasn't an elite all-star supporting cast. It's a good supporting cast. Deebo Samuel's still an effective player, and salute Deebo tonight. Just had the 1 catch for 5 yards on a little pop pass, but he ran over a couple defenders into the end zone for a touchdown. He had 3 carries for 16 yards, did a nice job on kick returns. Another good game for Deebo. Not as good as last game, but still showed some signs of life, which is good. But that's not an elite supporting cast. That's a pretty standard supporting cast. First round pick in Pearsall, veteran all-pro tight end with Kittle. And then you got Jawan Jennings, who is a former 7th round pick in the midst of a breakout season. It's a good team. And then Isaac Orendo is your rookie 4th round pick. That's a good team. It's not bad, but it's a little more normal than offensive player of the year and Deebo Samuel and all pro Brandon Ayuk and all pro George Kittle and all pro left tackle Trent Williams. This is a tough spot for Purdy, and I thought he played really well, and that's a pretty significant deal. But again, this goes back to the whole $60 million conversation. The 2 interceptions weren't great. Specifically the first one, especially since the first one came after he threw one that was negated by a pass interference penalty, where he did that was not a good throw to George Kittle. So they're going to pay him. I'm interested to see where it lands. We'll talk more about that. For real, last thing. Josh Dobbs was QB2 tonight when he had to step in with a minute and 40 seconds left or whatever it was. Even less than that. When he had to step in with less than 2 minutes left, he comes in, made a couple of money throws, ran for a touchdown. I think the most significant development on that front tonight was that I think Josh Dobbs is probably your long-term QB2 if you can get him to sign up for that. He's a solid player, and I think there are worse players you can have step in as a backup quarterback. And I thought he showed why tonight. Like I said, 7-yard touchdown run. He goes 3 for 4, 35 yards. I even thought his incompletion, I think it was to Jawan Jennings on the right side of the end zone. I thought he had the right idea with the throw, good touch. He just missed it. That's what I am interested to see with Josh Dobbs, is if he's willing to kind of take on this long-term backup role behind Brock Purdy. Because the 49ers got to figure that out. Especially if Purdy's going to be a guy who every once in a while has an issue with his right elbow. But Dobbs was good tonight. And I thought it was interesting that he was QB2 over Brandon Allen, because maybe the 49ers think that, hey, you know what, this is QB2 of the future as well. That's what I got. again, the Sacramento Kings fired their head coach, so Chris Biederman had to be on assignment. I believe the Kings won tonight. Good for them. Shout out to Doug Christie. He's the homie. That does it for me tonight. We'll be back during the week. Sorry for the holiday schedule. It's been a weird, hectic couple of weeks. I've had some travel. There were the holidays, so we'll hopefully get back on a little bit more normal schedule this week, and then get you guys going into the off season. We continue doing pods throughout the off season, so we're not going to leave you hanging. We'll be here as a fascinating few months gets set up for the 49ers, but they lose tonight, Monday night, 40-34 to the Detroit Lions. Fun game overall. Learned a lot, and lots to watch moving forward as well. Please like and subscribe on YouTube if you have not. We appreciate that immensely. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube at Candlestick Chronicles Podcast, or just search Candlestick Chronicles, and we will be there. And of course, on whatever your podcast platform you listen to, we're there as well. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm Kyle Madson. Salute. And we will talk to you next time.